All right, so I was browsing around, so let's see what's cooking in Betaflight 4.2. Okay, to set up our search, we go to Betaflight, go to pull requests, and there we click milestones, we click 4.2, and then we'll click on the closed PRs, pull requests, so that's the request to pull code back in from other branches folks might have local repositories. We're gonna browse down, click at the very end, and take a look at what we got. So what I'm going to review here is just what catches my eye. I'm sorry if I skipped a pull request you worked really hard on. That is a big deal that I just didn't happen to hit it. Please put comments down below if there's something I missed that's a pretty significant thing, and I'm sure people would be interested in it. Anyways, looking at this one, I saw Dominic Clifton did D-Shot telemetry optimization. Read through this. Honestly, I read it. I don't know exactly what it all means, but that is very cool that we have some optimization for D-Shot signal processing. Moving on to page 8, going up to the top here, I saw this debug mode for black box out. If you check that out, that is a new debug mode for seeing your bandwidth for recording black box data. So if you're having breaks in your logs and whatnot, you can record that and maybe try to figure out where your slow spot is. If you're going into the CLI and type in get debug, you can see this new black box out option here for debugging, and that's what that is for. So check out that PR. Nice little safety feature on this. It won't allow, if you have it set, say, per angle mode, and you go to arm, which needs the accelerometer, and its accelerometer's not calibrated, it won't let it arm. So that's a nice little safety feature that's added in there. Here's one that's a number of improvements for the OSD information over MSP, which is what the DJI goggles use for getting the custom OSD from Betaflight onto it. And you can read down through here. So it's a number of improvements in regard to that. I'm not going to go through all the details, but check that out by Jay Flyper. That's pretty cool. So you'll see some better handling of that data over the MSP with your DJI goggle set. Some other MSP stuff, we're passing ascent and descent rates for GPS guided into the MSP so that it can be configurable in the configurator. Anything that's being pushed onto MSP, that means now the configurator can then talk to it. So you probably see some settings coming there in the configurator. Same thing here for setting of the allowing to arm without a fixed GPS location, maybe something coming in the configurator there or in Lua script. Since we're on OSD, let's hit these two. This is the distance from home alert. So if you go so far out away from your home position, the distance from home will start to blink, just a little OSD option there. Same thing for this. This is for channels, so you can get your auxiliary channels to display on the OSD. If you wanted to see that information, you can see here's the aux channels, here's how it would look, and this is here how it would display. Here's a pretty significant one. This is for how the feed forward smooths out your RC signals. For FrSky, Crossfire, and R9, the signals, the RC rate, the steps of where it transmits the signals into the flight controller are not very consistent, even at close range. It's a lot better with Crossfire Shot. That's what Crossfire Shot is, to improve that, because this guy, Chris Thompson, CTZ Snooze, started talking to Trappy and bringing it up, and Trappy took some action. He started working with the OpenTX dev. Now, the FrSky and OpenTX, that's still an issue. Hopefully they'll try to resolve that. Maybe we need to highlight that a little bit more as a problem in the community or with their firmware so that it gets fixed. But as a holdover, so introduction in Betaflight 4.1, you can have a couple different options how feed forward interprets the RC signals coming in. First, it's just the classic way, it's off, which is not the default in 4.1. Next, it's interpolation. Joe Lucid brought that to Betaflight, so that's the interpolated method. Second is the averaging method, which is the default in Betaflight 4.1. This PR for Betaflight 4.2 is bringing in 3-point averaging and 4-point averaging. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If you go into 4.2 and you type in get ff underscore, you'll see this interpolation set point. 2-point averaging is the same thing as averaging in 4.1. They just called it -2-point because obviously you have to have 2 points to average something. So that's the first one, averaging, 2-point averaging. Now we added 3-point averaging and 4-point averaging, hence why averaging was renamed to 2-point averaging, just to give some distinction between them. These are the two new options in Betaflight 4.2. If you check out this PR, it's basically saying that 3-point averaging could be good for crossfire. Now, with crossfire shot, maybe you just need standard averaging or even interpolation or off. We'll see how that improves things, but at least the legacy crossfire firmwares. And then for R9, you might see some improvement. It looks like, tests demonstrated some massive benefits, it says here, for R9 with 4-point averaging. So it will delay the feed forward signal to boost the PID some to bring the quad into moves, but it will smooth it out enough that you can leverage like feed forward boost, and you can raise your feed forward spike limit and raise your feed forward values, so you can, with a smoother signal, so you can get those gains and get your gyro to be tracking closer to, directly on top of your sticks with a smoother signal. When you have a really rough signal, it gets kind of jittery because it's, hopping up and down. So this is a pretty significant one. Looking forward to working more with that in Betaflight 4.2. This is one I'm not too familiar with, the virtual current meter, but it looks like eTracer Bruce Lucklock changed it so that it's following the set point version, I guess, of throttle, the one that's altered by throttle boost or if you have a throttle cap, versus just using the RC command input of the throttle. So that makes a lot of sense because that's what the quad's going to be using. It's going to be the throttle boosted or capped version of the throttle and not the RC command version. That's the raw input, and then it gets manipulated through throttle boost and throttle cap. So that's the one we're using. I haven't used the virtual current meter. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but if you do use that, you can notice this change here. It's a neat little one. If you use the launch control for in racing, it will start to have a flashing element here when you're within 10% of the trigger point. That's probably nice. Show black box log number in OSD when it's available. That is a great add. Add OSD background support for static portions of the display element. So this looks like an optimization on the computer end side of it to take less processing power, since this stuff just needs to be rendered one time instead of keep rendering it every cycle. Reduce the anti-gravity gain default to 3.5. Added support for FR Sky OSD. VTX tables with no parameters will return the VTX power level. This one's pretty cool. This is adding a camera framing OSD element, so you can set the height and the width so that if your HD camera view is less than your FPV camera, or there's a certain area that you want to box, maybe it's the inside of where the super view occurs or something like that, you can add that box and it gives you a visual representation on your OSD for framing as you're doing flights, things like that. So that's a neat little element that Bruce added into the project there. Got Bruce again working the OSD, so when you power up you can see your custom logo come up, but with this variable you can have it so that when you arm, your custom logo comes up so you can see it in your recording. You'd never really see those custom logos too much because they're only when you plug in the quad, and usually you have the quad sitting on the ground before you plug in your goggles. So this is pretty cool. Probably be seeing some more of those custom logos on the DVR footage folks have. This is a pretty cool one by Illusion FPV. This adds a expo curve to your D-term low pass filter raising. So low pass one on the D-term raises up when you raise throttle. But by default, it works like this. It's almost like the low point is almost like a bench. So as you come down and throttle, it just hits 70 hertz by default. Now, obviously, that 70 hertz is higher if you're moving the slider up. As you're moving the slider, if you look down here, this is kind of the minimum, and this is the maximum it would go. So as this slider goes up now, this is the minimum, this is the maximum, okay? So that moves with the slider. However, it's just a linear relationship, and that lower value is kind of a bench, where you can see here, you can put it on an expo, and the expo curve kind of looks like this. So as you go up in higher levels of the expo curve, either the 1, the medium, or the max setting, you can see that it raises up faster, and the intent there is for prop wash handling. So you want to get that D term to raise faster, that low pass filter to raise up quicker, to reduce the phase delay on the D term, and that's what this option's for. So check it out. Illusion FPV submitted that. If you go into the CLI for now on it and type in get DYN, you'll see it right down here. You have expo and you have a 0 to 10 curve, so you can just step up through that at the different values. So on this one, this is by Chris Thompson, CTZ Snooze. This is some work with Ken Mitchell and Rave, the original coder of the dynamic notch. and he simplified the code of how it's targeting some peaks some more. He's been working on this for a couple years now, trying to continuously optimize the dynamic notch, and then also changing a little bit how the ranges are affected. So instead of the low, medium, high, you would have the lower range, and you just set the max range. So if you set the max for your max peak noise at 600, that will adjust the range automatically. So if you're interested in reading more about that, check out this PR. This is cool. Hydra, or Dominic Clifton, the inventor of CleanFlight, did a PR so that when you have a disarm flag in black box, it's actually going to show you why it disarmed, either through the switch or anti-TAS, or I'm sure there's a number of reasons it's disarming. So you'll have that, a little bit of extra data in there now. There is a new TDK or InvenSense gyro out on the market. It is the ICM 42605. The support for that has been added in by Dominic Clifton as well here. What's different about this one, it has all kinds of low pass and notch filtering now available in the gyro itself. So that's, whether it's better or not is, yet to be seen, to be vetted. And first thing you need to vet it is you need to be able to support it and fly it. So now it can be at least flown, and we can start to explore if, using the notch filters within the gyro is better than the notch filters within Betaflight, that kind of stuff. The low pass filter suites are still there, but they're more adjustable than in the current volley of ICM, the 2602s and all that kind of stuff. So that's support for that new chip is added in. And there's also a new Bosch gyro out there, the BMI 270. eTracer has added that in for support as well. So that can be checked out and see what differences that has from the Bosch BMI 160 that's currently used on the Radix flight control board. This is a big one. Bruce refactored how the PID, the gyro and PID loop work, which was always kind of funky before because your gyro always sampled in 8K mode at 8K. It's just Betaflight would downsample it when you would set the gyro rate. So let's go check that out. So here in the configurator in Betaflight 4.1, you can set your gyro rate, which is kind of confusing because the hardware is going to run at 8K no matter what you picked here. It's just you were picking the rate at which the data was being collected. So at 4K it was getting every other sample. That was changed actually from 5.1 to 4.1, or from 3.5 to 4.1, that instead of every other sample, it averaged the samples together. And then it ran the gyro filters at whatever you pick. So 4K would be the gyro filter rate. So you could select that. Now all the filtering has been moved to just operate in the PID loop. In 4.2, it's going to be locked that, your hardware is running at 8K. That's the gyro sample rate, period. The filters and everything's in the PID loop, and then you can pick your PID loop rate. This runs way more efficient. So you're going to see some lifeblood breathed into those F3 and F4 boards because it drops the processor utilization by quite a bit. So I haven't looked a ton at it yet because I've still been flying a lot of 4.1 actually lately, but on the couple I have, I've definitely noticed a drop in CPU utilization, and you can see it right here on this board. This is an F4 board. I have a bidirectional D shot, and I don't have anything hooked up. You can see it's just right here, but it shouldn't matter. Bidirectional D shot. I have 8K accelerometers on, 8K, 8K. Like I said, D shot 300, so I guess I could put that up to 600. Come back into here, you can see my utilization down here is like 12%. Go into the TAT, into the CLI, and go to tasks, and you can see my filter and PID loop are running at a more consistent rate here, right on the nose, 8,000 hertz, and you can see my utilizations here. That would have spiked in 4.1, that would have spiked above 100%. So with this change, we're running 8K, 8K with the RPM filter enabled, and we're still in good shape there. And you can see if you run the task command multiple times, you can see you're getting that 8K, that 8,000 hertz or 8K more consistently across the board. If you do that in 4.1, you'll see it jumps around. It's usually never right at the target loop rate. So this gyro native sampling rate refactoring, restructuring, that was a a big change that's coming in 4.2. So Lucian worked on decoupling the anti-gravity gain from the I-term gains you have entered. So before it just gets into the math, it was, multiplying by the two things. Now it is decoupled. You can read this PR a little bit more about it. I got to mess with it myself a little bit and wrap my head around it, but it's decoupled. So you should get a more consistent, like if you're moving your I gains up or down, your anti-gravity amount is not going to be as affected as much, I guess. Another thing he worked on is having the D-term low pass curve, the expo curve stuff we talked about. That's going to be in the CMS, which would be in the OSD stuff, so you can adjust it there as well. Watch out, Emu Flight. Not fast enough race mode was added into Betaflight. So this is one where if you enable this, you can see the CLI variable down here. When you're in angle mode, the angle mode would be reactive on the roll axis, but the pitch would be in rate mode. It's one of the things that I know Emu Flight added in some of their features. It really comes from Silverware. So it looks like Phobos added into Betaflight here as well. So now it's in both. Open source. Yay! Here's a fix to I-term relax. You know how I always noticed that in gyro mode, I-term relax at a cutoff at 11 worked a little bit better than set point mode. And Chris would always argue with me a little bit about this. And he always liked set point mode for racing and everything. There was a bug in set point mode. He fixed that up. It was working, just not how it's supposed to be. It was cutting out a little bit sooner than it should have been. And that's probably what led to what I was kind of seeing, but I didn't connect the dots and realize that there was a bug. I guess when Chris was looking at it a little bit more, he saw it. It's fixed. 4.2 set point mode. I would say probably going forward in 4.2, just leave it in set point mode. You might want to bring down that cutoff. If you're freestyle, I have to mess with it yet. Maybe not. So check it out. If you are getting I-term accumulation, just bring that down. I do notice in set point mode, what is nice is that if you are exiting a move, one thing that's bad about gyro mode is that your gyro signal crosses over the set point. The gyro mode for I-term relax shuts off, so then the I-term will start to accumulate. In set point mode, that doesn't occur. So if you're really, really close to track and set point, so you got your feed forward like just dialed in, and then it's more likely to cross over, then you could start to get a little bit of I-term accumulation. But if you're following set point really well, your I-term doesn't accumulate. So kind of washes itself out. But there's nothing, set point mode might be the way to go moving forward in 4.2. So check it out with that bug fix. I know he has some diagrams back down in here, and you can see this is how it was kicking on and off, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It was supposed to kick on through the move and then kick, be on through the move here, and now it's fixed to this, which is appropriate. So it's arresting the I-term accumulation. You can see it's going down to 0. As it's ramping up and as it's ramping down, that's exactly what it's supposed to be doing in set point mode. So good fix there. So this is a pretty cool one to read. This is some tweaks in feed forward when you have either averaging 2, averaging 3, or averaging 4, or just the feed forward interpolation set to on. Read this through here. When set to on, averaging, the pilot gets a full boost, blah, blah, blah. If it's 2 or 3 or 4, it changes the behavior a little bit behind the scenes. And then there's a little bit of a guide down here, average 2, average 3, average 4, depending on what you're doing. If you want, smooth cinematic HD stuff, you're probably averaging 4, 3, so on and so forth. If you have that combination, if you're doing racing, probably even less. So check that out. That's in there from CTZ Snooze as well. I like this one a lot. This is from Bruce. This is the yaw spin recovery, which is off a lot by default, or the threshold set so high that it doesn't really activate. So we definitely want to get that, for me, setting that to auto, and it will set the yaw spin recovery to kick in if the yaw rate exceeds my yaw stick input rate. So if you hit a gate or whatever, yaw spin recovery kicks in right away and gets that reset for you as quickly as it can. Let's bang through a couple here. We got simplification of the motor protocol PID loop limiting. So this is a ad essentially for the Bosch gyros that aren't normal 8K. They're like the 3 point whatever kilohertz range, and this will streamline that a little bit so that there's a little bit more synergy between the motor protocol selected and the gyro rate. The dynamic idle was added to the MSP, so hopefully you'll see that pop up and a little bit more widespread use of that in the configurator. Same for rate types. So that is added into the MSP as well, because you can pick, race flight rate type or Betaflight, so on and so forth. Motor output limiting was added to the MSP as well for the configurator. And then Illusion FPV added in some new rate systems so that you can, I guess, more easily set your rates without having to take a notebook in the field, he says. And I got to look at this myself, but you can see some adjustments here. I think the intent is it allows you to have a more customized rate curve here, whereas right now with Betaflight, you're kind of wedged into those parameters of the RC rate, the expo, and the super rate, and that defines a curve, and then you're kind of stuck with that. Where here, I believe you're going to be able to customize that a little bit more to your liking. Something like this down here, where it's a little flatter in the center and then arcs up pretty steeply here, which is somewhat like super rate. So again, I got to wrap my head around a little bit more, but that has been merged in as well. So those were the closed PRs. Those are already merged in. These are the current active open ones. So you got the Team Black Sheep Crossfire protocol. So that's that fixed crossfire shot, I guess they're calling it. OSD here, where you can add decimals. You can define the decimals for different OSD elements. And then maybe some slider changes if that PR gets moving along. And some other things on here. And I'm sure some more stuff will come. There's always a little bit of a rush for PRs to get submitted before the deadline. With that, the PR deadline is coming up quick. March 25th will be when the feature freeze will enact. So that's 2.5 weeks. So if you have something you're thinking about or working on or want to get a PR into Betaflight, get her submitted. And that is what we have for what's new in Betaflight 4.2 so far, at least. Stay tuned as the release candidates come out. We'll start to peel back the onion on some of these features and see what they are. And obviously when the stable release comes out as well, some tutorials on how to customize these things and what they do and so on and so forth. So thanks everybody, and I hope this helped.
Accelerated ideas.